Well, hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and if you look down on the screen below, because I got you, I have Brady Bunch boxes, Joe. I don't know if you can see, but you're underneath. So if you look
Okay.
up, there you go, and I look
You.
down. Exactly.
All
welcome,
right.
welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. So are
Yes.
you? How was before we get started talking about all the nonsense that's going on? How was your weekend?
Well, the weekend was, okay. We're waiting for this system to come in, and of course, it's been a three-prong system. The first prong came in mostly as sleet and ice. Then we
Right.
had a bit of a winter mission last night, and then woke up this morning to some snow. I got to tell you something, Joe. Here in Putnam Valley, I have all of 1 and maybe 1.5 inch of snow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very heavy consistency type snow. I was trying to shovel it this afternoon. It was kind of like trying to shovel wet concrete.
Oh,
I really
well,
didn't have all that much.
I totally
Uh,
understand. We
and I've been watching some of the local television forecasters, all of whom are saying that where I live, before this night is over, I'm going to have anywhere from 4 to 7 to maybe as much as 6 to 12
Oh,
inches,
good
which
luck with that. Oh,
which
good
I find this
luck.
difficult to believe.
You know, I got I have to tell you. Um, Hang on. By the way, I can see. I just want to let everybody watching tonight. I can see everybody on the chat now. So I'm hoping that all the audio is good. I don't see anyone complaining about the audio, so that's good. So evening to everybody, and I'm going to monitor the chat also, or try to monitor as I'm doing 20 things at once. If you've got questions, please put them on there, and we will address them. I have to tell you, Joe, from the get-go, from the start of this, uh, when it was pretty obvious, whenever you deal with a cutoff low like this, it's a two-part event,
Right.
and it carries over over the course of 2 days. I dread those, if not only because of the longevity, but because inevitably, as I always try to do and always fail miserably at, is to communicate the fact that there is a first part and a second part. So, and I thought this time around, at least, bless you, I thought this time around that the fact that the first part for Sunday was kind of contained in Sunday, and the gap where things slowed down or came to a complete stop was during the overnight Sunday night into Monday morning. That this would be easy to communicate. That part one on Sunday would produce this, and part two on Monday would produce that, and inevitably, no one reads. Okay, I mean, no one reads. So, and I spent my time just trying to adjust forecast. I never went with the big. I never really went with the humongous numbers. Although north of you go north of Dutchess County up toward Albany, they got a foot to a foot and a half up there.
16.5 inches at the Albany County Airport as of 5 o'clock this afternoon. And there's a little town nearby called Knox in the area of Albany, 20.6 inches of snow.
Wow.
Incredible.
Lewis Heck, thanks for hitting super chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Chuck Cardillo up in the Catskills. I think he told me Chuck, you told me this morning that you had like what 20 so far, but he's up at I think at over 2,000 feet up. So he's basically like the yodeler at the top of the mountain.
Right.
Okay, so
Some of these forecasts are going for tremendous snows in the immediate tri-state area. They're going to be like the yodeler on The Price is Right, where they overbid and the yodeler after about 20 steps goes over the mountain.
yes. Yeah,
Boom.
the second part of this, which was today, was another thing that I usually dread, and that is when you deal with these upper lows, you get these it's banding. You deal with banded precip on the radar, and you, no matter what you try to do, wherever you think the bands are going to be, they're going to
Yeah,
be someplace else.
exactly.
And it was funny this afternoon, just out of curiosity. I went through every single short-term model, from the RGEM to the H drops to the NAM, the two NAMs, the 3 and the 12, all the wharfs and all the rest of it. Do you know that, and the HRRR, do you know that not, I was going to be very generous, not a single one was even remotely close to another one. They
Right.
all had different ideas, but who had the bands in North Jersey? Who had them in South Jersey? Who had them on Long Island? Who had them in the Hudson Valley? Who had them in the Connecticut? Who had them all in the above and just had a straight, area of snow everywhere? So it's impossible to forecast, and I just kind of said that from the onset yesterday and last night. As far as today is concerned, is that somebody's going to get into those bands, and North Jersey did this morning into this afternoon, and now Central and parts of South Jersey are getting into some of the bands.
Right. And meanwhile, there are people who are pinging me on Facebook Messenger. One guy who lived in eastern Dutchess County, and he said, I have not seen a single flake all day long.
Yeah.
Of course, he's probably getting some snow now, but he said, for the rest of this storm, at 5 o'clock this afternoon, I posted a snow map and a forecast for the Hudson Valley in general. And for places in the north and eastern sections, I went for an additional, and I'm stressing here, on top of what has already fallen, an additional 2 or 3 inches.
Right, but if they wind up with a total of 6, someone's going to criticize you that's saying that you only went for 2 to 3. By the way,
Well,
Mrs. Rayo says that it's 30 degrees and snowing lightly in western Putnam County, and she only has 1.5 inches so far. Is she home, or is she out with the snowblower?
No, she's... We don't have enough snow for the snowblower, really. I mean, that's why I was out with scraping today with about 1 inch to 1.25 inches of snow. And again, that was heavy-duty wet snow. The ratio was probably not 10 to 1, but it was more like maybe 4 or 5 to 1. And we're hoping, Joe, both my wife and I, we're hoping that we get at least a couple of inches to warrant breaking out the snowblower tomorrow. Otherwise, we're going to have to figure out a way to get rid of this crud because
Yeah.
It's tough.
Tony Robertson says only a dusting in Piscataway, New Jersey, but 6 miles away in Warren Township, 5 inches
Right.
from today. And that's kind of how it lined up in Jersey. If you were inside the band, and I'm going to bring up the water vapor imagery loop, Joe, because it's kind of dramatic on tonight. It's got the deep trough. I mean, this trough is so deep in the east. This really powerful upper low. And if you look off our coastline, you can see that the coastal low, the second coastal low, because there's 2 of them, the second coastal low is revving up, and it's getting underneath the rotation of that upper low. It's about to become what we call vertically stacked.
Right.
And you're seeing these bands that are coming in from the east to the west. If the bands themselves, it's literally, in these situations, they're like 10 miles, it may be 10 or 15 miles wide. If you're inside that band, you could easily get double or triple the amount of snow than if you were sitting outside that band. And some places got into it and some places didn't.
Yes, it's kind of like our version of what they get sometimes in Buffalo and Rochester or Watertown, New York, the so-called lake effect, because this is kind of like how lake effect acts. Extremely localized bands of heavy snow, and you can go again 5 or 10 miles either side of them and get absolutely nothing. And that's what we saw in many places today.
And there's still more bands going on the radar, which I'm going to pull up in a moment here. But I was really impressed by how deep this upper trough is. You would think with that upper low as deep as it is that we would have wound up with an even deeper low and much more widespread snow. But that first arm kind of came up. Today I just thought, I was kind of thinking you see all this energy around, but sometimes it doesn't quite come together. Or in this instance, I think what happens is it does come together, but it comes together a little bit too late. It's going to come together for southeastern New England and for Boston perhaps later tonight and early on Tuesday.
Yeah, and one thing that, looking at this a couple of days ago, I said to myself, my goodness, that thing is digging all the way well to our south. And I was kind of questioning whether or not we would see any really significant activity on the backlash or whatever. But as we saw today, the banding and localized areas of heavy snow versus other places that got very little. And you have to see if you agree with me, Joe. I think from now until about 11 o'clock tonight, that's where we're going to be in line for anything from light snow to maybe any one particular spot getting a heavy band or two of snow. I think after 11 o'clock, that pretty much is going to tell the story. And after that, it's just going to be lingering snow showers and flurries, finally coming to an end by daybreak tomorrow morning. But whatever we're going to put down in terms of additional significant snow amounts probably will be from now till about 11 o'clock or midnight tonight.
I thought maybe it might be just, well, we're going to quibble about an hour or two. Maybe it lasts till 12 or 12:30. But yeah, if it doesn't get put down between now and then, that's it. We're pretty much done. I put the visible satellite loop up, and there was a disjointed nature to all of this from the get-go. And you can see the cloud bulge that's out in the Atlantic. That's actually the first low that formed yesterday. That's moved out to the east-northeast, and now you're getting a second low that's developing under the upper low, which is moving across southern Virginia and exiting near Chesapeake Bay, and then is going to be making its way toward Cape Cod. I've been just kind of watching the radars hour by hour and just seeing everything kind of dried up late this afternoon. And on the latest radar, let me just freshen it up a bit here. And I'll probably be able to go to some local radars. One of the things, Joe, that's happened in the last couple of hours is there's snow that's developed across Massachusetts back to, I guess maybe it's just south of Albany, maybe between Kingston and Albany. And that stuff is moving southeastward. And in the meantime, there were some heavy bands that came in from off the ocean that moved into central Jersey and south of 195. And that's moving southward. And there's other blotchy precip here, but as you notice, there's a lot of gaping holes, and some places are just not seeing anything at the moment. But it is what, that phrase about it being, it is what it is. We're just going to have to deal with what the cards that have been dealt to us, and that's what the radar is, a blotchy mess.
And do you agree also, Joe, I from many years ago, the former meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service when it was at Rockefeller Center, Harold Gibson. And I was actually still in college. And I had, as an adjunct professor, Tom Grant, who we both know very well.
I remember, sure. Tom always brings a smile to my face.
And Tom, he brought us on like a field trip to the 30 Rockefeller Plaza National Weather Service. And Harold Gibson was there, and he was chatting with us. And one of the questions was, well, what happens if you see a forecast that you've issued busting? What do you do? Do you change on the fly? Let's say you went for a major snow and you realize that it's not going to be a heavy snowfall. Do you change it? Do you keep it, or what? And he said, if you see it busting and if you see a change, you lower the snow amounts. You do what
you do your job.
You do nowcasting.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Now, but today, in today's society, now again, if you have a disagreement on this, tell me, but it seems to me like after a forecast of, let's say, a mammoth snowfall, or even a significant snowfall, like 6 to 12 inches, that the forecasters seem to be hesitant to lower it to any degree, even after they see right before their eyes that things are not kind of working out the way they're working out. It's almost as if they say, well, let's keep it out there and hope for the best instead of making any significant adjustments.
Well, look, I will just say this. I think one of the things that happens is, I find myself shouting above a screaming crowd oftentimes when things are not going the way they should, or perhaps when I say not going the way they should, the way you thought they should be going in terms of a forecast, that you're even if you try to change, you no one hears you. They gravitate to whatever, and it doesn't help either. By the way, where Christina Pedia on the chat mentions that ABC tonight calls this, quote, a deadly winter storm of the Northeast and a nor'easter, and of course the Weather Channel naming it. Look, I guess my problem is that we're here and we do it from the fun of meteorology, correct?
Right.
Okay, and we enjoy weather. We enjoy watching these things evolve. We are fighting against those who are there with the megaphones shouting that the apocalypse of the day is upon us.
Right.
And how do you beat that? Now, I think the Weather Service, unfortunately, is kind of caught in between. I think they do a good job of updating and lowering. No one wants to lower if you've gone for a certain amount, and I don't think that they, in this particular instance, some areas the forecast worked out, some areas it didn't, but that's all the time. So, right. How do you handle it? And I think it made it especially difficult on this case, Joe, because of the fact that it was over 2 days. What do? If you put out a map that only covers the first day, people don't read it. They don't look at the timestamp. So if we're only going to get 2 or 3 inches the first day and you wind up with a foot, they're going to say that, well, no, you only forecasted 2 to 3 inches. So I think they're between a rock and a hard place, and I think a lot of forecasters are between a rock and a hard place when it comes to this sort of stuff.
It's amazing to me, and of course now in our current situation, because for years and years I never really got a chance to look at the competition. I never got a chance to see what others on other channels were saying versus what I was saying on my own channel. Now, all of a sudden, I find myself in my living room on the couch, flicking around and making comparison forecasting, which is something I never had the advantage of doing up until now. And I'm watching these maps, these snow maps coming up. And again, I'm saying to myself, well, I live up here in Putnam County, in the town of Putnam Valley, New York. And I'm looking at places on all of these maps. The lowest was something like 4 to 7 inches, and others were putting me in like the 6 to 12 inch zone. And I'm saying, what is this?
Right.
And even just do simple mathematics. For me to get even 4 or 5 inches, I would have to go 1 inch per hour from now until at least midnight tonight.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
As I know, that ain't happening.
No.
But
not unless that huge band of heavy snow that's to your north continues to drop southeastward. But just so you know, when I'm looking here on the radar up from what's up to your north, that's dropping south. Actually, it's moving southwestward because it's rotating around the low.
It's a difficult forecast. I understand it's a very difficult forecast with the banding, with the initial first shock being more sleety and rainy as opposed to snowy or whatever. That's another thing also. These maps that I saw tonight, not a single forecaster indicated in their discussion when they were showing these maps that this was either the entire storm, taking into account what has already fallen, versus what is coming from now until midnight tonight. No clarification whatsoever. And I guarantee you that while, yes, some people got hit hard, in the immediate tri-state metropolitan area, you're going to see either tomorrow or Wednesday newspaper columnists and people walking the street saying, well, they blew it again. They said that we're going to get 10 inches of snow, and I had hardly maybe 2 or 3.
Well, this is why, Mr. Rayo, that I don't watch anybody else, and haven't for years and years. I couldn't tell you who's, there are a few people. If I know who the people are on the air, it's because they were on the air back years ago and still are. That's how I know who they are. But in terms of some of the folks that are on now, I just can't. I just can't pay any attention at all. I find that for my own sanity, the best thing is to just kind of stay focused on what's happening, with what's in front of me, and otherwise you're just going to drive yourself, crazy listening to all the nonsense that goes on. And something, if there's another apocalypse that they can go to tomorrow, they may forget about this fairly quickly. And I have to tell you, I take issue with anybody who says that this was a bust, because if you're saying that, at least from the standpoint of what I was trying to communicate through all of this, you're not paying attention, and part of the I'm going to say this, but you disagree with me on this. Part of the blame also lies in how the audience consumes the information, because you and I and others. There are others like us, very few. Certainly, they don't have their own show, but there are others who try to make a really valiant attempt at explaining the complexities of a situation making notation of the fact that, yeah, you know what, it has, the system is in two parts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the audience, a lot of the audience never hears that. When I write it on Facebook, they don't read it. They
Right.
don't even read it.
Right.
It's mind-boggling to me.
It's mind-boggling to me too. I even today I did a discussion on my Facebook page. I posted a map, and there must have been at least a handful of people saying, "What exactly am I going to get in White Plains? What am I going to see in Poughkeepsie?" You know, and I say to myself, "It's there. Read it. Look at it.
Yeah.
What you know." I guess
No,
they
I
want.
know. I get really annoyed there. You know, you take the time to draw a map and put it on there. You know, when I draw a graphic, and it's on the screen. You know, you don't know how to read a map. You don't know if you don't know where if you can't find yourself on a standard map, there's a big problem here.
Yeah.
Okay, there really is. And the whole concept of zip code forecasting is also another thing that drives me nuts. So, you know what? Let's just let me I'll bring up the HRRR. A lovely model the HRRR is. Another absolute mess today as I was following it. And you know, this is a model that does an awful job until you ignore it, and that's the day it does a good job. But here it is for the last run. Let me make sure I got the last run. Hang on one second. And the last run, so we just passed 0Z. So let me see if the 23Z. Yep, the 23Z is up. And it's out to 17 hours. So I just want to take a look to see if it matches up to what's on the radar. It actually doesn't match up that badly. And it brings that stuff that's in upstate New York and in Massachusetts pretty much southward over Long Island and northern New Jersey. So there's still some more bands to get through. But, you know, after 1 a.m., they start to dry out fairly quickly. You got a 965, what is that? A 960? There's a 960, 965 low. Tomorrow at 16Z, so at 11 o'clock at 42.6 and 67.7, with the back edge of snow to about Boston.
Right.
So you know, the banded nature continues, and as you said, if it doesn't happen between now and 11 or 12 o'clock, it ain't going to happen.
I also use that model. Actually, you were the one who showed it to me, Joe, on the 700 millibar in the lower dynamics.
Yes.
And it applies, I guess, it's similar to what you would see on the NCEP models for Omega, the areas
Yes.
of atmospheric
Well,
energy.
let me bring it up here. Hang on. So I'll bring it up on the NAM. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
All right. So let's bring it up on the NAM model. Oh, this double screen I have now is great. Thank you, Tony, if you're watching. Your instructions were perfect once I figured them out. You know, with Windows 10, Tony, your instructions were absolutely clear. I had to just kind of, when I made the transition, it was a little difficult. Okay, so the 700 millibar, the advection and the FGen, whatever that means.
Right.
All right, give me 1 second. I just want to make sure everybody's seeing it, and they are. So this is from late this afternoon and evening. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, that first shot, the warm air advection shot that we had yesterday, there was a band of significant FGen that moved on through and then progressed north and eastward up across New England.
All right, so let me go back. Let me go back to yesterday's. I'll go back to Saturday evening so we can show the folks what you're talking of.
And this is great. This is great when, especially in the spring and summer, when you're looking at potential thunderstorm activity, or even during the winter during significant nor'easters. When you see those purple lines, those purple contours crowded together, you call for a thunderstorm,
Right.
or at least a feel or two of thunder.
So
because there's a lot of activity that's going on with that.
So I have the map from 9 o'clock yesterday morning, And those purple bands that Joe's talking about, there was some lead bands that moved up to the north. That basically kind of was the high and middle clouds rolling in. But when you look down in Virginia and North Carolina, that's where you had all this that tight purple area that forced Omega as it's called, with all that energy. And indeed, there was some heavy precip that came up out of that and moved on up to the northeast as the day wore on. And you can see it here. I have at 4:00 in the afternoon, Joe, it was just a sea of purple all over the place.
Oh, it's 32 degrees here at my house with heavy rain. In fact, I have one of those Davis weather stations, and on the console, the readout, when we have particularly heavy rain, there's a flashing message that says it's raining cats and dogs. It was raining cats and dogs and 32 degrees. I didn't want to be outside, but I'm sure that there was kind of a mixture of plain rain and also sleet and ice pellets occurring. It was not very good to be outdoors last evening at around 7 o'clock with all of that taking place.
No, it certainly wasn't. Now, I'm going to run through the NAM really quick for everyone. I'm going to go back to the current NAM run, and it's loading. Well, we're coming up on 7:30, and everything's been working good so far, knock on wood, Joe. I'm getting good at this technical stuff.
Good. You have to come up here and help me with OBS. I'm trying to figure that, on OBS, they have like any number of videos, but the guy who does it, and I know he's doing his best to try to go step by step, but it's overwhelming to me because there's just so many steps.
Yeah. I when I get back from my short trip, I will we'll make it a point to come up I'll come up there and I can show you how to do stuff.
Mrs. Ray will make you what would you make him for dinner?
Whatever he wants.
Oh, whatever bless her heart. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Rayo. So here's the NAM tonight. The NAM itself, I mean, that's another thing that went on today. Some of these, the NAM, you look at the NAM, you would think we'd have solid radar coverage of snow right now from Cape May all the way up to Portland, Maine. It did a really poor job of picking up of showing the banded nature. If you look at the darker blues, yes, but it's showing lighter snows in between, and in the radar, when you look at it, there's just not a whole lot going on in between with this stuff.
Right.
And then, it gets out of here, and then after that, it looks like weather gets better as this low moves away. Kind of looks to be on the chilly side for pretty much the rest of the week, I thought.
I have to give credit to the NAM, 3-kilometer NAM. Saturday night, we were looking at it, and it just had this entire area, the Hudson Valley and surrounding areas, enveloped in pink, indicating that we were going to see a lot more in the way of sleet and ice as opposed to rain or snow. And that pretty much was the story here for much of the day yesterday.
That the NAM did a good job with. The NAM 12-kilometer did also, showing the sleet line moving pretty far north up the Hudson Valley, getting almost but not quite to Albany. It did quite well. But as far as the banding nature that's going on today and tonight, that is not being handled well at all.
Well, someday when they really tighten the grid, really tighten it, maybe they'll be able to at least give us an idea of a better idea of where these bands may develop or are developing. Because as you pointed out, depending on what model you looked at, the bands were scattered every which way, and you had to say to yourself, like, who do I believe or what do I believe?
But I already thought that the rapid refresh HRRR model had a tight grid. Isn't it like a mile or something?
Yeah, well, gotta make it even tighter. I don't really know. I'm not into.
I mean, are we supposed to get a grid point on every street corner? Well, and I'm not even being funny. I think that's what IBM wants to do with their approach to weather. They use everybody's cell phone as a way of gathering weather data.
Right.
You'd be your own weather balloon.
Yeah.
So, Joe, I pulled up the GFS here. Once this pulls out, it really doesn't look like there's much going on. It looks fairly chilly for much of the rest of the week. There's some kind of cold front that comes through on Friday that pops up a little low south of Nantucket Friday night into Saturday morning. and the GFS has a little bit of snow in southeastern New England from this, but it doesn't really do much for us other than a little brief rain or snow shower late Friday or Friday night, and then
Hey, we may also get something on Wednesday. It looks like maybe as a weather system moves on through
yeah.
on
There's a
Wednesday.
little there's a weak front slash trough that's swinging down from the north across the Great Lakes, and there looks like there's some lake effect action that goes on Wednesday and Wednesday night in upstate New York. Yeah, and there's another low that forms out east southeast of Cape Cod. I'll tell you this. Since mid-October, we've seen a lot of lows form offshore and a lot of lows making the climb up the East Coast in one form or another. I think that's another signal that this winter is not going to be like last winter.
Well, last winter, what did we have? We did have a very cold November.
Right,
and
but
then
we had
December,
we had that screaming Pacific fire hose jet
right.
that was almost unrelenting, and that's far from what we have now.
Right. And that's why December and most of January was abnormally mild. I mean, one of the milder winters last year in the east. But right, without that fire hose this year, more of a flow coming out of central Canada. But it does look like, agree or disagree with me if you will, starting maybe late in the weekend or early next week, we actually will get a little bit of a relaxation and maybe some stretches of milder or
I agree. I mean, beginning maybe later Sunday, Monday into Tuesday, but right behind it, Joe, the ridge in the west, kind of showing the 500 here. The upper air, the ridge builds way up the west coast, and you've got this Canadian connection again with a fairly strong trough moving into the east for the middle part of next week. So yeah, we probably. And by warm up, quote unquote, we're talking about temperatures getting back to near seasonal or maybe a touch above. But
right.
by no means are we talking about any kind of, super heat of 10 to 15 degrees above average. And as I'm just rolling through here really fast, I mean, the trough still wants to be in the east. It just kind of looks like, I don't know, there's a little more volatility in the overall pattern going into the middle part of the month of December. I don't see anything especially warm, but I don't see anything especially cold either.
Yeah, and of course, next week at this time on Monday, we will have a front to our west, southerly or southwesterly winds. I'm not sure. I mean, I went for a high in the Hudson Valley on average of around 52 next Monday.
That's doable. I could see that.
I'm not quite sure if we're going to do it because sometimes you get these fronts coming in. There's also going to be some wet weather. It looks like not snowy or icy, but just plain rainy or showery weather ahead of that front. And we could take a crack at 50 or above next Monday in contrast to what's going on out there right now. So that'll be a nice little change.
I'm going to bring up, I'm going to punch up the radar again. So hang on one second. I got to find it first. That's weather and hazards. And that's another thing too, Joe. With the bands of snow, you got with the temperatures like hovering around the 32 degree mark. It's really imperative that you get intensity because if you don't get intensity, it's just not going to stick.
Correct.
So people have to bear that in mind. And on the other hand, to make the case immediately to say that it's it's too warm to stick. No, that's not the case. Intensity trumps everything. When it comes to trying to figure out accumulations, okay, intensity trumps temperatures that are above freezing, the warm ground, the sun angle, the street light angle, the moon angle, all of that stuff, okay? If you're snowing at a half a mile or less visibility, moderate snow, it's sticking to everything. Right. And if it doesn't immediately stick, give it about 30 minutes and it will. Now, I got the radar up here. Still pretty blotchy. Actually, according to the radar, I should be able to see some snowflakes out my window right now because there is some stuff on Long Island going on. And then there's it seems like it's trying to fill in a little bit across Connecticut. And then there's a heavier banjo. That the one that was up by Albany and into Massachusetts is sliding southwestward. So that band now is moving its way through central Dutchess County to Poughkeepsie. Right. So you might get into that in the next hour or so.
Well, we'll see. We actually, as I said at the start of the show, we're actually here where I am. We want at least a couple of more inches so that we can actually use that snowblower tomorrow, because you really can't use a snowblower when you only got about an inch or an inch
No,
and a half
no,
of slimy slush, which is
no.
what we have out there now.
That's when your neighbors come out and without you knowing it, they're saying, "Can you believe those people losing a snowblower for only an inch of snow?"
Well, actually, the guy across the street from me was using a snowblower today. I was kind of scratching my head and saying, "Really, really, you're using a snowblower with
Well,
all this?" So
it is fun. You want to be able to use you use your tools that you have, I guess. Especially, I love my snowblower. It's I've had it for what 15 years now. Still starts on the first pull.
well, if anything, if there you
I'll
have any
send
problems
it
with
to
it,
Mrs. Rayo right away. In fact, in fact, I will not only either I'll send it to her or I will send a helicopter and fly her down to repair my snowblower. I have the Mount Holly, the Fort Dix radar out of Mount Holly, and there's a lot for snow lovers. They must be really they're looking at the radar and seeing this solid blotch of precip that's sitting off the New Jersey coast, moving north to south, touching the coast. Some of it's gone. Some of it has moved its way through Monmouth and Ocean counties and moving southward. And earlier today, Joe, there were some thunderstorms out there just offshore. And yet, with all of that going on, with all of that energy, it was not enough to cause a widespread snowfall anywhere. I'm a little surprised that there's so much space in here in between these bands.
yes, and just to get back to where I was talking about 15 or 20 minutes ago, do you agree that the rookies who are starting out in this field of forecasting or whatever, I mean, some of them are actually still looking at the latest guidance, computer guidance figures and maps, whereas right now you should really be concentrating more on looking, as we are doing right now, at the radar, even plotting. Not too
Oh
many people
yeah.
plot anymore.
Well,
It's
they don't.
doing
Nobody plots
downcasting.
anymore, Joe.
Yeah,
Nobody plots. It's plotted for you. And I always felt that plotting was great because it really gave you a hands-on feel for how things really work.
right.
You could see where the pressure falls were. You could see where the low was developing. All of that. Now, by doing it by hand, you're looking at every single observation, so it's all going into your head. I used to watch Tom Morgan at the Weather Service plot the entire sectional of the Northeast, and he would do it within like 30 minutes. And I'm
Right.
talking about like a really serious, plot here, not just temperature and wind, but every data point imaginable.
You and I have a mutual acquaintance. I have actually more. He's a good friend of mine, Pete Bergman,
Sure.
who I went to school with at City College, and he was just like Tom Morgan. Pete would love doing sectionals and doing them in such an artistic manner. We used to have in the weather office at school a large plexiglass where Pete would use a grease pen and pencil and just do it. And we felt so bad because he would change it every day
Right.
from the previous day using carbon tetrachloride.
Oh my
that
God, yes.
and wiping it off. But it was like he was ruining a masterpiece. Pete did such a great job on those sectional maps, and he did them as fast as anybody I knew, and maybe along with Tom Morgan. But nobody does that anymore.
No, nobody does. Hey,
It's old
Javon.
fashioned.
Hey, Javon Perry, where are you? I know you're up in Massachusetts. How much snow did you get? Because I think you told me you had 10 inches up by you. Is that still the case? He's going to respond on the chat, hopefully, if he's still
Tim
on.
Tim Veltman, who lives in the Albany area, and Tim and I were chatting late last week, and I said to him, some of these models are going for the Albany area 21, 23, 24. I said, I think that's a little overly excessive. I said, I could see a foot, but 20, 22 inches, and here we are talking now tonight that Albany has, the airport has 16.5, but places in and around the Capital District has 18 and 20 inches. So the models really didn't do all that badly.
I was never really good at picking upside. It's like I've always felt that once it's over 12 inches, everything on top of that is just gravy. Does it really make a difference if it's between 12 and 20? It's like when it hits 95 versus, or like, I'm sorry, when it, I guess when it hits 95 and it goes to 98 or 9, it's okay. It's hot.
It is.
I mean, it really is hot. So I don't know. there were. I mean, I have. There have been times where I have forecasted 20 plus,
Right.
and thankfully they happened on all those times. But it's a hard thing to do. I mean, that's a gutsy call to go put 24 inches on the map. It don't happen very often.
Right.
And in fact, Joe, if you know as well as I do, before the blizzard of '96, for us, before the blizzard of '96, you never saw a 20-inch amount. You didn't even see a 12-inch amount in
Right.
terms of what we went through in the '70s and '80s and early '90s. So with the odd exceptions here and there. So
Well, the 78 storm, the second of the two 78 storms, the one in February. I mean, driving home from work the day before and listening to the forecast of a foot or more, I almost had I almost like drove off the road, because up until then you never heard a forecast for a foot or more of snow. It was always, you started at 6 and then you'd go up, 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 up as the storm wore on.
right.
And to say that you'd actually go for a foot or more of snow, that was unique. And the only other time I think we actually saw another forecast of a foot or more of snow after 78 was the 83 storm, the megalopolitan snowstorm of February of 83, and then of course 96. So it's the technology has made it a little bit better for us to anticipate such tremendous storms when they do happen.
Yeah,
And
and since 2000, we've had a lot of storms that have produced 20-inch snows.
it's amazing.
And we just have far more probably in the last 20 years than we had in the prior 100. But
Right.
you got. I always say you got to be a little careful when you go back to look at past data, because I have snow measurements from here where I live. Well, 60, 70 years ago, there was hardly anybody out here where
Right.
I live. So who was out here to take an observation in north of MacArthur Airport?
Now, who was the weather observer? His name slips. Don, out in eastern Long Island.
He messaged me like 2 weeks ago.
Really?
Don Thompson.
Don Thompson.
Yeah, he's
Don
not.
Thompson.
He doesn't live here anymore, but he was out where he was in Noyak,
Right.
as opposed to
And
Nyack, which is in
and-
the Hudson Valley. Noyak.
Right, Noyak, not Nyack, but Noyak. But the Weather Service was at 30 Rock. He's out at Noyak in eastern Long Island near the Forks. And sometimes there would be weather events, and he would like call them, or not email them, but I mean write to them and tell them, this happened and that happened. I had heavy stuff, and they wouldn't believe him. At least it seemed that way. They were ignoring him or whatever like that. And it wasn't until the Weather Service actually moved out to eastern Long Island that they suddenly realized or found out that, hey, Don Thompson was right. What he's been saying in terms of abnormally cold temperatures and unusually snowfall amounts, sometimes the eastern end jutting out and getting offshore.
Oh yeah. Well, let me just really quick. Javon Perry, thanks for hitting super chat tonight. Also Timothy Veltman, Johnny Quest, Andover, Mass, where he is, 13 inches and counting. So he's still at it, still going.
Still going like the
Still
Energizer
going.
Bunny.
Well, Joe, let me tell you a couple of things from my end of it when it comes to snow. So I believe it was December. I want to say December of '87. You see this banding situation that we have right now in New Jersey?
Right.
Okay, the way the radar was set up. And you might remember this, at least from the standpoint of me, experiencing it. But it was in early December. I believe it was December of '87 or '88.
I remember. I know exactly what you're talking about.
In a 20-mile wide band from the Saginaw Coast Parkway, which for those of you who are not on Long Island, the Saginaw Coast Parkway is a north-south parkway and basically cuts the island in half to a certain extent. When I say the island, I'm talking about all the way back to the geographic part, not the political part, but the geographic part going back to Brooklyn. So it basically cuts the island in half. So from that road, which is north-south, to another road, the William Floyd Parkway, that's east of me by about 20, maybe about 10 miles, maybe a little bit more than 10 miles. So perhaps it was about a 20, 25-mile band. We had I mean, every bit of a foot to a foot and a half of snow inside that 20-mile band. If you went outside of that, you got to the Nassau-Suffolk line, there was barely an inch, and they never saw a flake or an ice pellet anywhere else. And at the William Floyd Parkway, near where the Weather Service is now in Upton, it rained there. They had all rain. Right. So I found myself, I called the Weather Service about it. Nobody believed me. And I'm like, I'm a professional here. You're not believing me. I'm telling you this. And this was back at a time we didn't have cell phones, couldn't take pictures. There was no social media. Okay, so there was really no way for me to prove it. And I remember that finally, I remember hearing a story deep on 1010 Winds, maybe about 12 minutes into the newscast, saying there are reports that there may have been a significant snowfall in parts of Long Island. It was basically like a 20-second reader. So I can understand from what you're saying with Don, and even as late as recently as say the early 2000s, I had trouble conveying to some TV people that there was one of those winters. I think it was the 02-03 winter, which I call the Suffolk County winter, because that was a winter where every storm started at the Suffolk County line and went east. And I wound up with close to 80 inches for the season that year. Yeah. So there were a lot of storms that produced very little to the west. And, it took some convincing of some people to let them know and say, hey, I don't know about you, because I know in the city you only got maybe about an inch or two out of this, but I've got every bit of 9 or 10 out here. There was storm after storm like that. No one believed you.
In fact, Tom Grant, our friend Tom Grant at the Weather Service, when everything came in and it became obvious and plain that, yes, there was indeed this localized area of very heavy snow, Tom wrote a special weather statement, which basically said, hey, folks, we didn't know what was happening either. We were reduced to being observers. That's the one thing I always admired about Tom. He didn't pull any punches. He told the truth.
Yeah, he did.
And basically, he just said, hey, this was something beyond our control and our ability to forecast. We were reduced to being just observers by hearing about this and getting all these reports about this. And in fact, I was traveling on the Cross Island Parkway, Joe, and it was for the most part nothing. It was diddly squat. We had nothing as I was traveling from Flushing onto the Cross Island. But when we got to where the LIE was, you may remember that at the LIE entrance going eastbound, there was an EJ Corvettes.
Yes.
Up on a hill out there, and we're looking, and he said,
"Love Corvettes."
Look at, we couldn't believe it. There was all that snow that was falling just a stone's throw away from us. Obviously, on the tail end of that snow band.
I remember the Corvettes over there. Yeah, you make a turn over by in Douglaston.
Right.
It just reminded me too about Tom Grant when he used to write weather discussions, and he would lecture landlords during. You'd get these cold blasts in the wintertime, and he would say, landlords are advised to keep heat up under such extreme cold conditions.
Right.
And
exactly.
That's sort of. I love Tom to death. I really do. He was, he's a great guy, and he is still with us. I understand.
He made one mistake, and I think you remember this. This is in the aftermath of the great blizzard of '78, that there was talk that there was going to be another somewhat similar storm coming, and the newspapers and the TV and the radio, another storm is coming this way, another storm is coming.
Yes.
Then on the day before the so-called big storm,
when the LFM pulled it,
the LFM pulled it to the south, and Tom went on.
The big storm we've been talking about for the place. Exactly. That other routes we've been talking about we at the Weather Service are, basically he said, right, we forecast weather. We don't forecast, the apocalypse.
We are not out to scoop someone on a news story. And he also said that, you said, yeah, and he had a somewhat nasal type voice. Well, the big storm it's much less fearsome and threatening.
Yeah.
The National Weather Service has often said that we will not try to scare the general public, blah, 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 blah. Well, unfortunately for Tom, that one run of the LFM, which took it to the south and had it missing us completely, the next run and the follow, to make a long story short, we ended up with 6 inches of snow.
Right. I remember that.
And William Bonner, who was the head of the Northeast region of the National Weather Service, called Tom in on the carpet. He said, "Next time, don't get so
Political.
political and out of this."
Yeah,
But
they
I love that.
that
He
was a
was the
sensitive year, if only because of the fact that that was the first year in almost 9 years that we had a 1 foot plus snowstorm, and
right,
suddenly we had a second one, which was almost unheard of,
right.
and the idea that there might have been a third one would sent some people spinning because there was a lot of snow on
Oh
the
yeah,
ground,
oh
and
yeah.
folks weren't used to that from the winters of the prior 6 years.
Well, that storm hit on a Monday, and beginning on Friday, the babble began about, oh, another storm, and you couldn't find milk or bread anywhere at a supermarket that Saturday or Sunday. People were running every which way, and then come Sunday afternoon, when Tom looked at the LFM and it looked like it was going to go to our south, that's when he went on Sunday evening on KWO 35 and said, "We're not getting the storm. Don't worry about it. It's all blah, 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 blah." And of course, naturally, as we just pointed out, Monday, everything changed again. We didn't get a monster or paralyzing storm, but 6 inches is still 6 inches and did cause some problems. And then in the aftermath of that, what did the Weather Service talk about? Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Oh,
Steve Lapointe says that he just got back in from the store. He's in Manhattan. He said it was coming down. He describes it as moderate snow in Manhattan. Cars, grassy surfaces, starting, are accumulating now. So
right.
I guess that, I'm going to bring up the local radar here, just to take a look. Again, it's that horror, that banded nature of all of this. Some people are getting it, some people are not. And I got to find, where did I put this? Oh, there's my map. I just want to freshen this up. Hang on, we'll give it. Now, this is the Mount Holly radar. Whenever you look at radars, folks, when you pull up these local radars from the Weather Service, be sure you go to the zone to the north and zone to the south, because it might show that there's no precip there, but in reality there may very well be. And you notice when I just flipped over to the Upton radar, actually it's starting to fill in a bit on Long Island. And also, Joe, to your north, that east-west band now in northern Connecticut is dropping southwestward. Looks like it's, almost getting into southern Dutchess and southern Ulster counties, and it then extends back up into Orange County. This arc that's there, and
Right.
you're going to be getting into that. That's going to be your last chance to get
Yes.
5 inch an hour snow, so you can get the 15.
Well, we'll see how it all pans out, but I think there's not much for me. No, unless you have anything to add, I don't have anything else to add
No, I think that's about it.
to this evening's symposium.
Yeah. I'm just kind of happy about the fact that now I've been trying to technically square things with doing the Joe and Joe weather show, and I think I got it all figured out now that I have the second monitor. Thanks again to Tony, to Tony C, who sent me the instructions on how to hook it all up. But now I can slide the windows over so I can monitor the chat. And poor Izzy in Lakewood, he wanted at least an inch of snow. He only has a half an inch of snow, but he says at least it's still snowing there. Yes, and there's still a little bit of time. Okay, there's still a little bit of time for you to get something there and put it on the ground. But yeah, I'm pretty well spent. This storm took believe it or not, Joe. This storm actually took a lot out of me. It takes a lot of energy to get to forecast all this stuff, and with all the stuff that I'm doing, that you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. The 2-day events, and having to deal with the changes in terms of what's actually happening. Forget what the models are doing, just what's actually happening. Has
Right.
made it especially tiring for me.
Right. Well, at a certain point during a storm, as I mentioned, you got to put away the models, put them to one side, and actually look at the satellite, look at the radar, maybe take down some observations, see what's happening. Nowcasting.
Yeah. Bill Huber said he's near me. He said that the ground is white. Now, give me a second. I'm gonna go look. I'm gonna look out the window.
He's looking out the window, folks.
Yeah. Well, it's dark. I can't see. There's not enough light. There's all sorts of like growth in the way in this window, so I'll have to look elsewhere. Izzy, thanks for hitting Super Chat. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Silvio Balzano. Nice to see you on, Silvio. Not much going. He's in Mayapack.
I wonder if he's distantly related, because my mother's maiden name is Balzano.
Oh, well,
and,
he just posted, so maybe he'll hear you and respond.
Okay.
Let's see.
A long lost cousin.
Well, if he does answer, actually, Silvio is close friends with my brother, so I can relay the question to him.
Okay.
Okay. If he doesn't, if we here he just said you need to give us a minute. He gave us hold a minute when he walked away. Joe and Joe. Wait, Silvio Bazzano, you needed to give us hold music. Oh, he says you should have given us when I went to look out the window. You should have given us hold music, a little Muzak.
Okay.
I often worry that the man who thought up Muzak might think up something else. Silvio, if you're still on, Joe's mother's maiden name was Balzano, so he was wondering whether you might be distantly related. He says that actually he said that your sister asked him, and he's from Ponza, 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 the town of Ponza. I don't know if that rings a bell.
All right. And he asked my sister?
He said your sister asked me.
Oh, okay.
We are from Ponza.
Okay.
So maybe somehow they connected somewhere else. But okay. Well, we'll find out. We'll figure it out. If Silvio, if you know, you can always message me direct. So we'll do this again.
Yes. In fact, in about 1.5 minutes for the 55th.
Oh yeah! Everybody jump on to Joe Rayo's live stream on Joe Rayo Weather, and if you haven't subscribed to Joe Rayo Weather, shame on your personage, and go on there and subscribe to his channel, Joe Rayo Weather.
They're going up, Joe. We're up to about 420 subscribers.
Okay, we got to get you to that 1,000.
That magic 1,000. But what I'm saying is, in about a minute, for the 55th consecutive year, Rudolph is coming on.
Yes.
And my favorite part of Rudolph is the black and white scene dating back 55 years, and the fake newspaper headlines with the Daily News saying Christmas may be canceled because of snowstorm.
Yeah. Scott Briller, the chairman, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm kind of getting used to working this window, Joe. It's a lot better. Do you have your live stream scheduled for 8 o'clock?
No, I don't have a. No, what I'm saying is at 8 o'clock. No, I'm not going live.
Oh, Rudolph's going live.
I'm going upstairs to watch Rudolph.
Okay, so you do that. We're going to say goodnight to everybody. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it greatly. Let me just finish typing this. And yes, we won't let Rudolph play in any more reindeer games.
No, the best part about that for me is when the elf comes along and hands Santa latest weather
report. Say right, exactly. It must.
And he's got this crazy looking abstract weather map behind him.
And it's the NAM. Yeah, the abstract weather map with the fronts upside down. There's a certain weather person in New York that you could watch if you want to watch the fronts upside down, but we won't mention names.
Right.
All right. So look, have a great night, Joe. Go watch Rudolph, and we'll talk to you again real soon. We'll do another show. Maybe if there's no weather going on, we could wait till next week to see what
maybe we'll do something later this week.
All right. Well, if there is, I'll be here and I'll let you know.
Au reservoir.
Au reservoir. Good night, everybody. Thanks again for being here. Really appreciate it greatly. And we will definitely see you tomorrow.